We're going to go ahead and get started. And Olivia, you're hosting us tonight, leading? Okay, awesome.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the second to last day of the Alternative Migrant Trail Walk Week. We're nearing the end of our virtual journey together. And we're just so glad to see everyone here again tonight. So good to be with you kind of consistently through the week. For those of you who don't know me or don't remember from earlier in the week, my name is Olivia Mena, and I'm a member of this year's organizing committee. I'm from Austin, Texas, and it's about my 4th or 5th year participating. I kind of lose track. I just want to make a couple quick announcements about the format of tonight, and then we'll get started. At the suggestion of some of the organizing committee members, we thought that we'd have kind of an open mic sort of after tonight's Q&A. So anyone who feels kind of in the mood to sort of stick around and talk or share, y'all have been sharing some just beautiful stuff online in the Facebook group and poems, and we've been really moved by that. We will have a kind of formal closing ceremony tomorrow. So we'll continue to share more of that, but anyone who'd like to sort of stay on after the call for a little bit, we'll leave the Zoom room open. And then like I mentioned, tomorrow we'll be having a final closing ceremony. And so there's a team of people that have been working on that this week and preparing some reflections. And one of the things that we do, and we end that session, is we read all the names of the deceased in the desert this year together. So I encourage you to come out and join us for that. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce my esteemed friend, Margo Cowan. Margo has been an advocate for migrant justice and just justice in general for 30 years now. And she has been very involved in the Migrant Trail since our first journey together in 2004. Prior to becoming an attorney, she was a farm worker organizer mentored by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Margo's efforts in the areas of border and immigration policy, as well as the representation of undocumented people and refugees, has spanned decades. She is a defense attorney for the Pima County Public Defender's Office. She's also lead counsel for the sanctuary movement. And are we in the second or third wave, Margo? I'm not sure what kind of wave we're in of sanctuary, but Margo's been in all of them. This is sanctuary movement, for those of you who haven't heard of it, is where churches and synagogues offer sanctuary to undocumented people facing deportation. She helped co-found the organization No More Deaths. Also one of our regular kind of sponsors of the Migrant Trail Walk as well. No More Deaths works to reduce the amount of deaths in the Arizona desert. So you've heard their name, of that organization's name, a few times over the week, because they kind of formed at about the same time we started walking. Margo is the project coordinator for Keep Tucson Together, one of our beneficiary organizations this week that we're raising funds for. It's a grassroots pro bono project that is working directly with community members to stop deportations and separations of families in southern Arizona. So Margo is going to share a history and perspective on the power of community organization in the legal fight for justice in the borderlands. And so her talk is this really perfect talk that kind of helps us connect this sort of larger arc that we've been sort of moving across during the week of the content, because I think today she'll talk a little bit about migrant deaths and COVID, and really sort of give us a picture on what's on the ground, what's happening right now. So I'll turn it over to you, Margo.
Olivia, thank you very much. And it's a great honor for me to be here with everyone this evening. Before we start, I ask us all to take a moment of silence to remember Mr. Floyd and his loved ones, everyone who's died at the hands of ICE, the Border Patrol Police, and the thousands of children and women and men who've died fleeing persecution in walking to America for a better life. I ask us to reflect for a moment. Thank you. What I'm going to do is sort of give a brief overview of the development of immigration law and policy in our country, because I think that's important when we consider how we can intervene and how we can be most effective in our efforts at community organizing. One has to understand that immigration law and policy is always enforced in a political context. In other words, it really doesn't matter what the law is. It matters what the politic is at the moment. The first immigration laws in the United States were the Chinese Exclusion Acts in the late 1800s. And that's important for us to know because our immigration laws have always been race-based, and they've always favored people from the original sending countries in Europe rather than Latin America or Africa or other, China, other countries. The first legalization in this country, the first sort of creation of a code was in 1924. And what happened in 1924 is that the United States Congress said, anybody who's in the United States on, I think it was January 1st, 1924, is an American citizen. But it did two other things that were really important. It created two policy underpinnings in American immigration law that remain today. One is family unification, and the second is an acknowledgement of our country's need for foreign-born workers to support our economy. And those things remain the public policy underpinnings in our immigration code. But we've never been able to fully recognize, codify, and empower those two public policy concerns. We've never created a statutory scheme that supports either of those. Instead, we've had essentially up until the early 2000s on the southwest border an open border. And so that was the way that foreign-born labor supported the American economy. And in times of depression, foreign-born workers were deported. In times of labor organizing, foreign-born workers were deported. And so it was an informal recognition and an ability to enter the country and work, except when it wasn't convenient for some reason. In 1948 was the next time that we said we're gonna legalize everybody who's in the United States. Although people in 1948 weren't made US citizens, they were made lawful permanent residents. It was in a thank you for all of the foreign-born workers that worked in the war effort. We did it again in 1972, and that was a celebration of diversity in our country. And of course, that was a moment of great celebration of civil rights. And we also celebrated the contribution of non-citizens to the arts, to writing, to work. But then the next time we did this was in 1986. And it was a dramatic public policy change from the thank you of the war era, from the celebration of diversity in the great civil rights era, to amnesty, to forgiving people for picking our crops and cleaning our toilets. And that was really the beginning of the development of dark public policy that we see manifesting itself today. But we always have to remember that these laws are enforced in a wholly political context. So what do I mean by that? During the Obama years, for example, there was legislation that was passed in the Clinton administration that was called expedited removal. And what that meant is that anyone who's encountered within 100 miles of the border in 10 days of entering could be deported by a simple Border Patrol agent. They didn't have a right to see a judge. And so during the Obama years, when thousands of people crossed the border every day, there were thousands of deportations, not at the hands of judges, but at the hands of simple Border Patrol agents in the desert. But there was also something that we hadn't seen for many, many administrations during the Obama years, and that was an attempt to fashion relief through administrative action. And of course, that was the creation of DACA. That was the creation of public policies that said for the people that actually are put in removal proceedings in the interior, we're going to prioritize. And so we're going to put all of our efforts into removing people for whom there is no relief. For example, felons convicted of serious crimes. But we're going to administratively close cases that perhaps don't qualify for relief under current law, but also are important actors, important players in the fabric of our society. And during the last couple of years of the Obama administration, in excess of 100,000 cases were closed around the country. And those courts only focused on people who essentially didn't have any relief. But the moment has dramatically changed. And so what do? Well, we do what we always do. I mean, we organize. Our strength is in our communities. We never, I'm a lawyer, but you don't look to the law for remedies. You look to the community for remedies, because that's where our lives contemporaneously exist, where our suffering exists and where our victories are to be had. And so we organize. What we've done in Tucson is we've created something called the Keep Tucson Together Community Clinic. It's a wholly pro bono legal clinic. At the moment, we represent 800 families, Tucson families that are in removal. And for example, during the Obama years, we assisted families in closing probably 1,000 open cases in the Tucson courts. And we also processed thousands of DACA applications and work permits and that kind of thing. But when I say we, what I mean is community. And community is people that clean houses all day, or people that have white-collar jobs, or school teachers, or retired judges, or just anybody. Because we firmly believe that one shouldn't sell knowledge. In other words, you shouldn't have to hire a lawyer to figure out what your rights are and what your remedies are. And so what our clinics do and what our goals are is to demystify the law for everyone. And we have clinics at a high school. We haven't had one now for a couple of months because the high school's been closed. And we have clinics in churches every weekend, in the high school every Thursday night. And we call on everyone who's there to listen and learn. And everything that they learn about the particulars of their case and about their rights and about demanding that ICE agents have a search warrant before they come in their house, and about not being afraid, that they don't hold on to that information for their own use and let it stop, but that they are messengers and organizers. And when they leave the school or they leave the church, they carry the word to their families, to their coworkers, to the people that they go to church with, to their neighbors. And that's the way that we protect community. And community is responsive. Community is alive. Community is vibrant. Community is like a huge sponge waiting to have information and knowledge deposited so that it can suck it up and then twist it out and share it with everyone else. And that's our fundamental belief about community service, is that the way that we really are able to mobilize community action is to demystify the law, and give people the skills and the information and the knowledge that they need, not only to defend themselves, but to defend their families, their neighbors, and their communities. So we come to this moment, and this is a truly, truly horrific moment in immigration history, a shameful moment for our country. There's just no question about it, shameful. The detention facilities in Arizona are full, and they're full of people who have COVID-19. And those people, when someone becomes sick, are not segregated, are not taken to a hospital. There aren't medical units set up in the detention facility, but rather everyone is put together in pods together, death pods together. And we, you know, a couple of months ago began to receive reports and letters from folks detained and calls from family members describing these horrific conditions that people are held in. One of the facilities in Eloy, Arizona, that houses about 4,000 people, had people, it's a contract facility, a core civic facility. And so before people were given face masks, they had to sign a waiver of liability, or they didn't get a face mask. And those face masks are to be used once and disposed of. And people were given a mask one time and weren't given another one. There wasn't soap in the sinks. People would complain of shortness of breath, of chest pain, of body aches, of high fever, and they would ask to see the doctor. And a fellow that we just bonded out a couple of weeks ago said he put in request after request to be seen by the doctor, and he was never seen. And our protocol is when we bond people out, we take them to a facility, they're immediately tested, and they're quarantined until the result comes back. And if they're positive, they're quarantined 14 more days. They see a doctor every single day. Their questions are answered. Their families receive counseling. That's day and night compared to what goes on in the detention facilities. And so one has to ask why. Why is it like that? And we can't just sort of look at superficial explanations for why. Well, we don't have the capacity to test. Well, we don't have the capacity to social distance. No, it's much more, it's darker, and it's much more nefarious. Under this administration, I'm convinced that this administration wants these people to die in detention. This is a death sentence. This is purposeful. And the other piece of that puzzle is that if they're not going to die in detention, at least this administration wants them to say, I can't suffer anymore, just deport me. It doesn't matter if I've lived here for 20 years. It doesn't matter if my kids are all US citizens. My spouse is a US citizen. I've always paid taxes. I'm buying my house. None of that matters. I've always contributed. I'm a part of the fabric of my community and my church. You know, I coach the soccer team. My skin is the wrong color. And that's the real deal. And that's where we are today. So what do? Well, our clinic of all volunteer troops dedicated to doing anything we can to liberate people from these death traps, produce bond package after bond package, affidavits after affidavits, humanitarian parole applications after humanitarian parole applications. And we tell the stories to the media, and we console families, and we push the courts, and we push them every day. We push them 20 or 30 times a day. We demand that they set hearings. We don't let go. We're like that dog that bites your foot. We don't let go. We never let go. We won't let go until everybody is out of these death traps. Yesterday, the Congress people that represent Southern Arizona, Congresswoman Kirkpatrick and Congressman Grijalva, sent a letter to two undersecretaries in ICE, and Benny Thompson, who is chair of the House Homeland Security Oversight Committee, signed on to the letter, as did Ruben Gallego, another Arizona congressman, and a couple of other people, demanding an investigation into the practice of denying humanitarian paroles, holding people in custody, not giving them access to medical care, treating them in a torturous way to either force them to self-deport or to die in custody. But this is only the beginning, because we know the way the House is treated and how departments, U.S. departments, Justice, Homeland Security respond to members of the House of Representatives. So we're also engaged in a campaign to bring national attention through the national press to these detention facilities. At the moment, I think that the figure as of yesterday was that there were 75 cases in La Palma. That's one of the detention facilities in Eloy. And there's no testing in these facilities. You're only tested when you're really, really sick. And so if there's 75 cases of people who are still in detention, not in the hospital, but still in detention, who come up positive, it's more likely than not that the true rate of infection in these facilities is closer to 90 or 95%. The other piece of the puzzle that I want to share with you that I think is very important, you know, these detention facilities are built in places like Eloy, a farm worker community where the farms have long been abandoned for more lucrative use of the land. And so who works in the detention facilities? Largely people of color, largely people that come from an economy where there are no alternatives. And so not only is the government putting the people that are detained in a position to contract the virus and suffer and die, but these corporations look at these, you know, working class, people of color employees and their families as being disposable people. Because guess what? There's a whole bunch more in line who need that minimum wage job. So the situation in detention, and I don't doubt, I'm sure that the situation in detention across America is the same. Here in Arizona, there are 3 detention facilities, and I would guess there probably are close to 7,000 people in detention. They go up and down, being all shut down or 4 pods shut down. And in a pod, there can be 125 people. Imagine 125 people living in close quarters with a significant percentage of them who are positive, and not just positive, they're sick and they're suffering. A young man called our office this last week. He said, I can't breathe, I have chest pain, I'm scared to death, I don't want to die in ICE custody. I don't want to die in ICE custody. I have no doubt that the same situation exists across America. And what happens with these courts is the courts are in the detention facilities. And so when there are these outbreaks, the judges and the staff and everybody else run, and they go off to Phoenix and they say, we're not having court anymore. It's too dangerous. We can't be in those facilities. So there are no judges to hear these bond applications. There are no judges to grant relief because they just all run off. And they say, well, the immigration court's closed this week. No, it's closed next week. No, it's closed the next week. No, it's closed the next week. So people are literally held without a remedy, without being able to go before a judge and say, Give me a bond. Hey, I've been here for 20 years. Give me a bond. It's very difficult at the moment. So I call on all of us, all of you, to look for the detention facilities in your communities, to look at who's doing advocacy around those centers, to get in touch with your members of Congress, and to advocate for the people that are held in detention, because those voices are certainly not being heard on the inside. It is an extremely dangerous situation. We publicized last week the release of a couple of fellows that we got out. One who had been sick for about a month and was having chest pains and was having difficulty breathing. And when he was bonded, he immediately tested positive. And he went on Univision and Telemundo and told his story. And Univision and Telemundo told the Spanish-speaking world, shared his story. We have to find ways to share those stories in America, to the mainline press, and calling on this administration to be responsible and to stop the killing. These are really, really difficult times, particularly for people that are in detention. And it's difficult to talk to families and console families because we share their anger. And we don't say it's okay. We say it's not okay. And we say, get in touch with your elected officials. And they do, and the elected officials act, and there's no response. It's a very, very dangerous situation. But we never give up. And that's what it means to engage in effective community organizing. When we are faced with the deadliest and the most tragic and the most heart-wrenching presentations, what we must do, what our obligation is to take our sadness, turn our sadness into action. We must always be creative. We must find those points where we can bring pressure. We must mobilize the community. No one in the community is afraid. Nobody's hiding. Everybody's up front. And every voice has to be heard. And so those of us that work in community facilitate lifting up of those voices so that it's not Margo Cowan appearing on the news. It's Melchor Tezoquipa and his boys. Because they'll never forget those US citizen boys, what they did to his dad. And they are tomorrow's leaders. And so when we demystify the law, and when we not empower, because people have power, people just need a little help connecting the dots. When we do that, when we facilitate that, there's no end to the power of community. And we can't forget that. As painful as it is, it's very painful. It's painful. But we can't ever forget the power of community. And we can't ever go stale, you know? We can't go stale. Cesar used to say, don't do the same thing twice. Don't be lazy. Figure out something else. And that's right. He also used to say, you know, poor people have all the time in the world. And in the middle of a pandemic, we really don't have all the time in the world. But we do in a sense that community is not going anywhere. And for those of us that act in community, our responsibility and really our gift is to make those connections, and to open the doors so that community voices sing loud and clear for themselves. And they sing the truth, and they hold our government accountable. And we're there with them. We're there with them, doing whatever we can to support. So, you know, the word from detention is ugly. It's scary. You know, ICE doesn't keep death figures on people who don't die in the facility. And so the fellows that we bond out say, when somebody's is near death, that's when they take them to the hospital, so that the count comes from the county, from the hospital, not from the facility. We have to shine light bright on all of these practices. And we have to find ways. We have to find ways. It's not easy. In fact, it's extremely difficult. Right now, we're faced with having 50 or 60 bond applications, motions to hear bond in front of judges stuck in the queue. And we have to persist, and we have to find ways to get them out of being stuck and have them be heard. But that's the strength of community. We have to understand that community holds the ultimate strength. And much of what we see in our country today, as a matter of fact, is community in action, holding our government, our police officers accountable, not for the violence of yesterday, but for the historic violence upon which our country is based. So I would be glad to answer any questions that anyone has. I did want to mention one other thing. I have my coach over here, Lupe, telling me what I forget. We believe very firmly that it's important that people who are poor and are in removal proceedings have appointed counsel, like a public defender in a criminal case. And in the United States development of our laws, even in death penalty cases in the 1930s, if you couldn't hire a lawyer, you didn't have a right to have a lawyer. And the law developed, and now in criminal cases, if you are facing any deprivation of liberty, 1 day in jail, you have a right to have appointed counsel if you're poor and you can't hire counsel. We feel very strongly that anybody in removal proceedings who's poor should have a publicly funded lawyer appointed. Think about it for a minute. If you're in a criminal case and you're looking at 1 day deprivation of your liberty, and you're entitled to have a publicly funded lawyer appointed, but you're in immigration proceedings, and like Melchor Tesoquipa has lived in Tucson for 21 years as two fine US citizen boys, purchasing his house, always paid taxes. You get put in removal, and you can't afford to pay some of the ratero lawyers that are supposedly practicing immigration law. You can't afford to pay them. You have to go in and stand by yourself, although the consequence is being torn from your family for the rest of your life. That's not right. That's not right. So a couple of 6 months ago or so, we started an initiative in Pima County, Justice for All, to put on the 2020 ballot in November the question of funding immigration defense office in Pima County government that would represent indigent folks in removal proceedings. And then the pandemic came to Tucson, and we've acted socially responsible, and so we've stopped collecting signatures, and we likely will have to carry our campaign to the November 2022 election, but that's okay. That's okay, because we know in Pima County people will support the right to institutionalize the right to counsel. And so while we would have liked to have it appear on this ballot, we're fine moving forward and getting it on the next. So unless my coach over here wiggles up another tickler, I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone has.
All right, thank you so much, Margo. And we have plenty of time for a lot of great conversation. So Eric, I think what we do, we've normally done these last few nights, We'll give everyone a 5-minute sort of bio break. You can go get a drink, use the restroom, step away, while Eric and Salo transition you into the webinar mode so you can put in your question and answers. And then we'll be reading those and going through those and having a conversation. So it's 11 after the hour, so about like 15, 16 after the hour. Come back and then we'll start the Q&A.
Great. So we'll be switching everybody over. And as soon as you're switched over, you can click on that Q&A button down at the bottom, and you can put in your questions if you'd like. So grab a snack, grab something to drink.
Thank you.
And the chat window is open, just for your info. So friends, just a reminder, if you have questions or comments that you'd like to share, mostly questions, please be sure to use the Q&A button down on the lower panel of your window, and then you can add your questions, and then Olivia will be managing that and trying to offer those questions, as many as we can, to Margo. But please be sure to ask your questions in the Q&A.
All right, we're 16 past the hour, so when the questions are rolling in, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask one more question of Margo first before we transition to the open questions, just to kind of open up the conversation a little bit more. And Margo, you talked a lot about detention tonight and your work with detention. We know that there's almost 27,000, I guess, according to ICE's most current figures of people that are currently in ICE detention right now. Only about 2,000 of them have been tested for COVID, more or less, and over 1,000 of them have been tested positive. So as you indicate, yeah, their numbers are off. I wanted to also ask about something that's connected, which is the closure of the border, the U.S. southern border, to asylum seekers, and some of the ways that kind of the border lands and some of these issues and questions are also at play in the border, which is kind of the other side of detention, right? Could you maybe start off by telling us a little bit about that situation too?
Sure, of course. You bring up a really important point. And there's two pieces to that I want to respond to. There was a piece about a month ago in the New York Times where it was reported that the Minister of Health for Guatemala had a whole plane of deportees tested when they arrived, and about 80% of the people on the plane tested positive. And so what we're doing is we're deporting illness to countries that certainly lack capacity to try and to deal with something like the pandemic. And those people will go home undoubtedly to very cramped quarters, won't have access to medical care, and the virus will be spread. I can't help but think that that's part of this nefarious public policy of not testing in detention, so that we don't know what the spread is of the virus in detention, and then deporting purposefully people who are infected to create a genocide in their countries of origin. I mean, we can't underestimate, these things don't happen by accident. These policies are not just, well, because we didn't figure it out, or no, these are very purposeful actions and purposeful policies that create purposeful results. And I think one of the purposeful results is to export the virus to third world countries, and predominantly to Latin America. Now, with the question with regard to the border is, it's not closed except to migrants. And so people that are picked up in the desert are immediately expelled. And but they pool because they left their countries of origin, fleeing terrible circumstances, persecution. Someone in their family was kidnapped or killed or tortured or threatened, or they're starving, or these are not, you don't walk to America because you're not doing something this afternoon. These are, imagine any of us getting up and walking halfway across our country. The only reason that happens is because your life circumstance is so horrific that you have no alternative. And so it's not like people that are turned back and are just on the other side of the border go home, catch a flight and go home. They're pooled in thousands of people along the border in terribly dangerous situations in terms of public health. And those people that are pooled next to the border are obviously going to become ill themselves, but they're also going to pass the virus throughout all of the border communities just south of the border. And it is part of a nefarious plan inflicted by this administration on people who are are fleeing persecution. And we have to see it for what it is. We have to speak out against it for what it is, not just say, well, you know, they don't want to put more people in the detention facilities. Well, they don't want to process asylum applications. That's not what it is. They want these people to die. They want the people in detention to die or to go home and infect their countries of origin. They want these people that are being immediately repatriated to the border to die. And that's the guts of this enforcement.
Thank you so much, Margo. I'm going to start reading some of the questions to you. I'll try to combine ones that are sort of similar. Thank you for your emphasis on the enduring power of community, especially during these times. Do you know of specific actions or organizing efforts in Tucson in the coming weeks that we can participate in? And this was particular to Tucson.
Yeah, you know, there are many. Tucson is a great place for activism and creative action, community-based action, particularly with regard to the detention facilities and the question of bond. That's a tough one. There was a couple of months ago a community action that I think maybe 1,000 people took part in, and they drove up to one of the detention facilities, and the call to action was let them go, let them all go. But what happened inside was the people that were detained that applauded and you know, were thankful that people on the outside stood with them, were tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets. And so it's difficult to figure out direct action aimed at these facilities and aimed at freeing the people that are detained and are effective without putting the people that are in the hands of dangerous folks in greater danger. You know, it's a difficult one to figure out.
Another question from Laura. The cases that were administratively closed, are they subject to reopening or are they given a path to legal status?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Laura. If a case is terminated in immigration court, then it can only be reopened under new circumstances. But if a case is just administratively closed, it can be reopened at any time. And literally hundreds of our Keep Tucson Together cases that were closed in the Obama years have been reopened in this era.
A question here from Carolyn. How many government versus privatized detention centers are there in the US? And is the treatment of the people in detention any better than in government facilities? That's
a good question. Here in Arizona, there are 3 facilities, and one of them is a federal facility. And I can't say that there's much difference at all in the way that people are treated. I will say, though, in the federal detention facility, there is a hospital inside the facility that is a good hospital, and we hear good reports about it. I don't know how many detention facilities there are in the United States. You know, when we did the first sanctuary movement, just to give you some context, in the early 80s, there were 5 detention facilities in the entire country.
Okay, next question. If SCOTUS ends the DACA, are there any measures or strategies to put in place to at least delay deportations?
Well, thank you for that question. There was an announcement, I think the end of February, beginning of March, by ICE that said to the DACA community, if the Supreme Court rules in our favor, now this is ICE, they shouldn't have a favor. If the Supreme Court rules in our favor, we're going to arrest all of the DACA beneficiaries in the United States. We know where they are, we have their applications, and we're going to hold them on military bases and initiate removal proceedings. All of the DACA beneficiaries are entitled to a full-blown removal proceeding with rights to appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is the administrative next step, wholly controlled by this administration, for all intents and purposes useless. But then there remains access to appeal into the federal courts. That's a very long process. There are nearly 1 million DACA beneficiaries in the United States. In some ways, I would like ICE to put them all in removal because that would break the system. And all of the families of, for example, in the cases that were closed in the Obama years, all of the asylum applications that are in the pipeline pending, those would all, the whole system would crash because it couldn't sustain an additional 900,000 million people put in removal. But let's not forget, that's really, really scary. That's really scary. And most DACA students, parents are not documented because their parents brought them when they were very young. And if their parents would have regularized their status in some way, they would have regularized the status of the kids. So that threat is goes to the heart of the community, the corazón de la comunidad. That's why it's so important to demystify the law and to remind people that the power is in their hands, not in the power of the government.
A comment from Rossi echoing that, really appreciated the idea that law doesn't remedy problems, communities do. I have another question from Lisa. How do we know if a detainee is ill? Because some will not complain because they do not want to worry their family.
That's right. The people that call us are desperate and scared, but you're absolutely right. I think that it's fair to assume, and I'm not, not being not being irresponsible. I think it's fair to assume that everyone in detention, I know it's fair to say that everybody in detention has been exposed to the virus. So depending on, who you are and what your medical condition is, how many times you've been exposed, what the exposure was, I think it's fair to assume that probably about 90%, the people that were tested on that Guatemalan, went by the Guatemalan health minister when that plane full of deportees landed, I think that that's probably a good reflection that about 90% of the people that are in custody are infected. It just depends how people manifest it. But, they could be many people passing the virus without symptoms. The people that call us or write us letters, lately we've gotten letters that describe these horrific conditions signed on to by 100 people in the same pod. So there are people inside that are organizing, trying to get the attention on the outside. The members of Congress, and we're going to post that up some way. Perhaps Olivia can tell you where that letter is people of Congress attached to the letter that they sent to the deputy secretaries there at ICE, a letter, I think signed by 30 or 40 people in a particular pod describing the abhorrent conditions that they were being detained in.
Yeah, we'll be sure to share that link on the email that we send out tonight and a copy of that so you all can see that one tonight. I have another kind of related question. How much are we paying per person to keep people in detention centers?
I don't know, but I'm sure it's thousands.
The last time I taught a course about this a couple years ago, I know it was like over $130 a person per night.
I do know that the United States at DHS contracts, with these private providers, and the private providers negotiate contracts that essentially say we'll be paid at full occupancy for every day. And so the incentive is to put people in and to keep people in and to keep it as full as possible.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Margo, but I think ICE is the only kind of policing agency that has a quota for beds, of keeping beds filled. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
So
it's not based on merit. It's not based on fact. It's based on an abstract financial agreement between the United States and a private provider.
I have a question from Brother David here. How quickly can the current administration's dastardly policies be undone with a new administration elected in November?
Well, I've heard the Vice President say that on his first day, he would freeze all deportations until they could be looked at to see who's in custody, who has a deportation order, who's in the process of a removal proceeding. And that's possible. I mean, things can be done by executive action to freeze this frame and then really begin to see if the people that we are persecuting, if it's in the public interest of our country to do that.
A question from Dan Abbott. Would you share the story of the DACA parents and their work in Tucson, helping people to get their citizenship papers and helping to create future voters?
Dan loves our Nats ladies. We have a really, part of our clinic, you know, we do principally deportation defense, but we also have processed maybe around 3,000 DACA applications, and all of our stuff is free. And of course, that takes a whole lot of volunteers to do, and the more people learn how to do those kinds of things and acquire those skills, the better prepared they are to, you know, educate and act in community. But we also have this team of rock stars on that do naturalization applications and also citizenship by acquisition and derivation. And what that means is that if you're the son or daughter of a native-born U.S. citizen, but you were born outside the United States, you might have a claim to citizenship through your parent. And if you do, you're a citizen at birth. And so the NATS team is made up largely of DACA moms. And, you know, they have a passion that's just off the charts. And they've naturalized a couple of thousand people. And what's great about it, when we were able to have our clinics at Pueblo High School, is that almost every week, those clinics were Thursday nights, almost every week somebody would come who had been sworn in the week before. And so we would introduce them to the 200 or 300 people that are in the cafeteria, and everybody celebrates. And those people, those new citizens are all really, really pissed off Mexicans. And so, you know, they're going to go vote, and they're going to go find everybody else that they know who's a US citizen and say, let's go, because they're natural born community leaders, natural born community organizers. We just, you know, all we really do is fill out papers and demystify papers. Sometimes you look at papers and you're like, oh man, what's this? No, this is nothing. This is a piece of cake for you. All the challenges you go through in life, your normal life, this is nothing. So we just sort of demystify the paper. People fill out the papers, and then they get really full of themselves. And the DACA moms have turned out thousands of new citizens just waiting to vote in November. And I think that there are clinics like Keep Tucson Together all across America, in schools and churches, just doing the work day in and day out. This is how the community organizes. This is how the community demystifies the law. This is how the community defends itself. And I think it's just happening everywhere.
I have a question from Susie here. Please update us about the children-parent separation in or outside of detention centers.
Well, that's horrific. There are, you know, this administration, we always have to learn from our enemies. We always have to watch how our enemies are effective and to intervene, but also to, you know, pick up some of those strategies if we're able to use them to our advantage. And one thing that this administration has been able to do, it's like a shotgun. Every day there's the basis, he does an action that's could form the basis of a class action lawsuit about something every day. and sometimes many times during the day. And the treatment of children, the separation of families is a perfect example. There are pockets of children that are hidden away, that are separated from their parents. And it's very, very difficult to get access to those kids. You know, we hear all the time about separation and inability to identify where children are. And you try to work through the DHS system to find children, and records are non-existent, but that's on purpose. Whenever we see these presentations, we have to understand that that's on purpose. And the last strategy, the latest strategy of this administration was to say, you know, you better be deported as a family, or else we're going to separate you from your child. You'll never see your child again. And we know that happens, but it happens in places where there aren't lawyers and where people can't see it. And so it happens.
Is our treatment, sorry, it is ill treatment, but is our treatment of ill detainees in violation of any US or international human rights conventions?
Absolutely, absolutely. But it goes back to what's our remedy? You know, really, what is our remedy? We've started doing habeas petitions, and a habeas petition is entered into federal court. And what that is that it's a petition that says, set me free because I don't have a remedy to be heard before the court. I think that last weekend, a group of volunteer lawyers did maybe 25 or 30 of those. We'll file them with federal court. They won't be heard for a month. And what happens to people in the meantime? You know, so you keep these different strategies, you know, going simultaneously. But I'm a strong believer that the remedy for social injustice is not in a courtroom. It's in community. Because courtrooms are not set up to really give us what we need. We need action today. And we don't need action a month from now. You know, a month from now, half of the people that are writing us letters will either be self-deported or, you know, really sick, or maybe even dead. I mean, the only way you get action today is if you can figure out soft spots and handles. And I'll tell you what, in this environment, it's very, very difficult to find soft spots and handles.
A question from Kat here. Many of us spent years protesting the Obama administration, which deported more than 2 million people. Do you think that a Biden administration would be the same, or would be more open, to being pushed towards more just policies? Yeah,
that's a good question, because I'm not a defender of President Obama. He can defend himself, certainly. But the mechanism that resulted in most of those deportations was something called expedited removal, which permitted Border Patrol agents and ICE agents who encountered someone out of status within 100 miles of the border or 10 days of entry to issue an order that has the same effect as an order issued by a judge. So most of the people that were deported in the Obama years were not deported by a judge. They were deported by a Border Patrol agent or an ICE agent. Now that really creates difficulties, all sorts of difficulties, but legal difficulties, because we see a lot of folks that are coming now seeking asylum that have one of these expedited removals. And if you already have a prior removal and you re-enter, if the pandemic wasn't thriving in Tucson, you would first be prosecuted in federal court for re-entry after removal. So you'd be a federal felon to start with, and that would limit the relief that you could seek under asylum. So it's a really nefarious legal net that has been created to take away legal remedies that people have. To go into an immigration court and say, here's so-and-so, and here are their equities, and they've earned their place to be here, and we want to close this hearing. These intertwined constructions of law have created a situation that's very, very difficult. for people that are detained along the border. But to answer Kat's question specifically, you know, when I was trying to sort of share context with you all, said the first time that we made people U.S. citizens, whoever was here, 1924, made them citizens. The next time, 48, we didn't make them citizens, but we made them lawful permanent residents. The next time, 72, lawful permanent residents. The next time, 86, lawful permanent residents. We did that because the statutory scheme has never changed. What's that say? That means our scheme for lawfully entering the United States as a lawful permanent resident doesn't work. You know, and sometimes you hear, so like once a generation or so, we say, okay, we're just going to sign everybody up who's here and that'll fix it. But it doesn't fix it because we never fix it. And then, you know, number of years down the road, we sign everybody up again. But we haven't done that since 1986. And so I think that there will be immigration reform, and there will be, actually, when you get in these periods, scholars and immigration thinkers and that kind of thing begin to toss around possible public policy suggestions about what might go into that kind of an omnibus bill. And one of the suggestions that I've heard is that everyone that has been removed and has family in the United States, that family member would be able to come back and they would be part of that, that relief. So do I think that Biden would you know, champion immigration reform? I think he will. I don't think it's because it's something close and dear to his heart, might be, but I don't think that's what it is. I think it's because it's time. I think it's because there are millions and millions of people in our country and all the DACAs and all their parents who contribute every single day. You know, we made a list a little while ago of just the DACA students that we know in our clinic. And it was a long list of people who are first responders, who are RNs, who are firemen. 4 of our kids are firemen. You know, caretakers of all sorts. These are people that are integrated into the fabric of our country. And it's not just that it's too hard, you know, to sort of take them out. It's that these are people who became DACA students organizing in their communities. Communities organized to demand protection for the kids. And communities will continue to organize to recognize the contribution of foreign-born workers in our community, and it will be those people that will make sure that Biden and whoever his running mate is will produce, will recognize what their contribution is and reward it rather than penalize it.
We're getting close to our time, so I'm going to read the last 2 questions to you because I think you can probably answer them in a way that kind of draws on your historical experience and kind of the contemporary moment. So one question from Isaac or Isaac: how would you compare the contemporary sanctuary movement with the sanctuary movement in the 1980s? And then a question from Laura: so what kind of action can those of us who remain in place take that would be most effective? So maybe you can answer that, kind of thinking, reflecting on the past and thinking about kind of the present and the way forward.
Well, you know, when we organized the sanctuary movement of the 80s, the border was quite different. It wasn't enforced. And I mean, as a matter of fact, it was a 3-strand barbed wire fence between Nogales, Arizona and Nogales, Sonora. And if you went down a mile or 2, the fence even ended. I remember some dear friends, the secretary and a priest at the Catholic Church there in Nogales, Arizona. The secretary would look out the window and say, okay, the Border Patrol fellas went for a lunch break now. Y'all can bring those people across now. Everybody's gone. And today our border is militarized. And it is, it's not only the wall, it is militarized people who have been poisoned with this idea that they're superior, regardless of whether they're Chicano, African American, or white, that they're better than the folks that are walking across. And you know, they have incredible firepower. The desert's full of drones. It's full of sensors. And unfortunately, on the other side of the border, the entry is controlled by cartels. And so like Monday and Wednesday are the days that maybe folks can come in, but only if you pay so much. And I'm not talking about having a guide. I'm talking about what it costs you to actually across the border. And the other days the border's closed because that's when the merchandise crosses. So the danger in the desert today is much greater than it was in the 80s. You know, in those days, there weren't hardly interior raids at all. And if there were, the joke was with the Border Patrol and the people that were picked up, well, it's okay, you'll be back tomorrow in time to go to work or go to school or whatever. It was an entirely different environment. Sanctuary today is very different. You know, one of the things that I've just never forgotten about the sanctuary of the 80s was first we moved people off the border to go into churches across America. And then churches began to say, you know what, we should have people go in people's homes, not just in our church buildings. And that was really what made the difference in public policy, because when people sat at the kitchen table and shared their stories and shared their humanity, American public policy toward Latin America began to change. And Americans throughout our country that wouldn't ordinarily come in contact with folks from Salvador or Guatemala, all of a sudden connected their family experience to the family experience that was being shared with them across the kitchen table. It was profound. It is just one more example of the power of community. And the second one, what was the second question?
About what to do in the present. What's the best way we can do something now?
You know, I think that there are efforts in every community to deal with the situations that are perpetrated by ICE and Homeland Security. If there's a community clinic in your community, go volunteer. If you want to organize a community clinic, come and see us in Tucson. We have people that come from all over the country that want to learn how to do this, and it's certainly is not rocket science, and we would love to help you figure it out. We really have to figure out how to give voice all across this country to the people that are in ICE detention and how we can get them out. Because my view is that today it's a purposeful policy to either break people's spirits and make them say, I can't stand this anymore, just deport me, or it's a policy to have them die in detention. And so that's a real challenge for us. I can't sit here and tell you I have answers. We go up against brick walls every day, and we find our way around them. But we haven't found our way around them enough because there are still, thousands of people in detention.
Thank you, Margo. Well, there's a few people in the chat who express interest in getting in touch and sharing ideas on media sources. What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
To email me at margo.cowan@pima.gov.
I put that in the chat for us there.
Okay.
I just want to thank you, Margo, for such a fantastic talk, for our generative conversation, and thank you to all the walkers and everyone who have participated. I also want to give a special thanks and acknowledgement to Roberto, who has been interpreting and translating every night. We're super appreciative of all your work.
Can I just say,
Sure.
I really want to thank everyone who's participated this year. It's been a real challenge. And it's just so meaningful that there are people all over the country that care about our border and care about our sisters and brothers that walk every day. And thank you so much for all you do.
Yes, and we're going to continue in that spirit tonight. Anyone who wants to kind of stay on after the call. And then tomorrow is our closing day of our virtual walk week together. And we'll close, but also in many ways, like Margo says, continue in the work and the efforts that we have before us. Walking around walls, breaking down walls, walking into those walls every day. So tomorrow we'll meet at the same time. We always do 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, or 8:30, depending on your time zone. And we'll look back kind of across what we've done this week over the past 17 years with a vision forward for building and sustaining community, our solidarity, and our work for justice in the borderlands and wherever we walk. So that concludes our program for tonight. So thank you again, Margo and everyone. Those who want to stick around, I guess I'll let Eric kind of manage us moving into that next sort of after discussion. But if anyone just kind of wants to stick around and connect and have that, one of the hardest things about this virtual environment and with so many people is we want to create that community and that experience of feeling together. And I think we've all done that by at least seeing each other and waving and smiling, but we thought maybe today and then tomorrow that'll be kind of a space to kind of do that. So thank you, everyone. And I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Margo, and thank you, Olivia, for your that was fantastic. Thank you for all that. So what we'll do is for those who want to stick around, we'll make you panelists, back to panelists, so that if you would like to share something, if you'd like to share a thought, if you'd like to share a reflection, we can call on folks and unmute your mic for you, and we'll go from there. So if you need to go take another bio break, please feel free to do that. And for those who want to stick around, we'll leave the room open for a while.
Let me see. I have to mute myself.
So while we're moving everybody over, we'll go ahead and unmute. So if you'd like to unmute and talk and share, please feel free to do so. And then we will, let's put everybody back into gallery mode here. There we go.
And since I'm the moderator and I've been talking, I'll just tell everyone I might have to jump out early and say goodnight to put my 4-year-old who popped on the screen to bed. It's kind of late in Central Time here. So if I don't get to say goodbye, I'll say goodbye now.
We're dealing with a lot of different time zones, so that makes it a little hard this year. Thank you, Olivia. It's good to see you, just in case I don't get to say goodbye to you before you leave. Sorry, I was on the wrong screen. Salo was making everybody panelists and I was making everybody an attendee. Sorry. Ay, 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 what a week.
No wonder. No wonder.
I know. Like, why isn't it going down? Wait, why are these people going back? Oh, good Lord. Sorry. I was on the wrong panel. The left hand and the right hand really should meet and figure out what they're doing, but that's all right. It's so good to see so many familiar faces and some awesome new faces as well that we haven't seen. I only get to go every other year, so it's always a pleasure to meet everybody. All right. Yay. So y'all should be able to unmute yourselves. Can people do that? No? Huh. Why? Why?
Okay.
I don't. Oh,
I
hey, somebody.
unmuted myself. I don't know if anyone else was able to.
Yeah, people should be able to unmute themselves in the lower left corner.
Still see some shaking heads saying no.
I don't know why. I can do like an asked. All right, I'm gonna try something. All right, try it now.
That worked.
Ah,
Yeah, got it.
that was, so what I had to do was evidently mute you all in order to unmute you.
Okay.
Randomness.
There we go.
Okay, Eric, I wanted to ask everybody a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm having to remain at home. So I wanted to know if there were any campaigns to email, write, call, any specific Congress people or any specific people, you know, about an issue that anyone is directing right now? And can we help in that way from home?
This is Kat. I've definitely signed on to different letters recently. Started getting emails back from McSally. Got on her list that way regarding all the action that Dan Millis sent out. So maybe what we could do is, if anybody's aware of any action that you need signatures or sign-ons, maybe you could post the action alert on the Migrant Trail Facebook page, and that way we can generate you know, more movement that way for folks.
You can also.
Thanks for that, Kat. If you don't mind, if you could please, if you're not talking, go ahead and mute your mic yourself, and you should be able to unmute it when you want to talk. Otherwise, we're going to start getting a lot of background noise like that and echo of whoever's talking. So if you are not talking, please go ahead and make sure that your mic is muted.
I don't know what just right.
You can also go to afsc.org, go to Coloradans for Immigrant Rights. There are many campaigns going on. There are many notices, as many as you want, and maybe more, that will link you to a number of efforts that are going forward, lobbying and organizing and everything else. I mean, so that's a portal that's available to everyone. And there are many, many links within that as well. afsc.org.
Could you repeat that, Tom? The letters?
Yeah, afsc.org. And you could do /Colorado. That's one. There's also San Diego and there's Philadelphia. But the Colorado is the one where I work, and you can get to lots of other places from there. It stands for American Friends Service Committee.
Okay, it's the
Kat,
Friends
and
Service.
Kat just put it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Are there any new people on in the discussion? How are you finding this week?
I'm new and I'm absolutely loving it. I don't know that I could physically walk 75 miles anymore, so being able to do it virtually has been just really feeding my soul, and it allows me to stay connected to an area of passion for me when I'm stuck at home. So I am greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
I can go ahead. This is Catherine, Dan Abbott's wife, and he's invited me to sit in with y'all to go through all of this. And first, I want to say that the organizing and the creativity that has been evident in a back behind the scenes kind of way. I've really appreciated that, and I think a lot of the participants have been able to get a sense of the Migrant Trail in a very different way. And I've appreciated that, even though I've been connected through Dan. I want to thank all of the people, particularly who've done the digital computer magic, because that makes it a lot more special to me, being able to see everybody's faces and so forth, and be able to connect with everybody that way. So well done. I'm really impressed, and am looking forward to this may sound really crazy, but in this COVID world that we're in, I'm looking forward to more opportunities like this from perhaps coalitions of organizations like the Migrant Trail connected with other organizations to share our border story in ways that we may not necessarily be effectively sharing. You guys have 15 years or more of experiences doing this on the border. And I think your outreach this year has been incredibly effective in sharing your story yet again. So I'm really appreciative, and thank you for all of the work that has gone into this. It's real evident, and I'm very appreciative. That's it.
I didn't think I'd be able to come in on a Migrant Trail walk, but this year I was able to. And it's so good to see Kat and David and Solo and Margo and Lupe. I rode with her a lot on the trip I took in 2016. Last year, I did go on an MCC learning tour to the border in Texas, and that was quite an experience also. But I always wanted to go on the Migrant Trail walk again, and I have enjoyed and learned so much from the speakers this year. Thank you.
This is Carolyn from Boulder, Colorado, and this is my first time with meeting everybody, and I was excited when I read the bios of the leaders that are just amazing. I mean, every day I've been shocked, and each day it hits me, and today was the worst. So I was wondering if I could play some music for you today.
Yes, please.
Please.
I'm a harpist, in case you can't tell. This is my little lap harp that I take places and play. I'm also a music therapist, and so this is therapy for me, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Wow. Thank you, Carolyn. It's been a long time since I heard you play the guitar. No, not so long. When you were playing it at the Pete Seeger birthday party, huh? Yeah, that was great.
But you weren't playing. Oh, I guess you did. You played one guitar piece.
I did. I think. What was it? Was it Deportees?
Yeah, probably Deportee.
Yeah.
That was great. You should do that tomorrow night. Play Deportee for us.
Well, we have a different program tomorrow night. I can.
We'll play tonight then. Get your guitar.
Well, I did tune my guitar up. I don't know if people want to.
We do. We do.
We do.
That.
Yep, we do.
We do.
All right. Just speak among yourselves and I'll go get the guitar.
Can I say something while he's doing that?
Go ahead.
This is Gail Kosarex from Tucson, and I did a Samaritan trip down to the border today. And if anybody would like to see pictures from that, I posted them on our Facebook page. And we reflected on the drive on the way down about the trail. And every place that we went, I would make comments to Valdemar and tell him, you know, what we experienced as we'd been walking through that area. But when we got to the wall, the Sotheby, we went east along the wall, and they have big equipment and they're starting drilling right now. So yeah, I took a few pictures and I put them on the Facebook page. So sorry, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
And Gail, I just want to thank you for all the pictures you've been posting on the Facebook page, and all the other folks who've been posting pictures of past walks or of your community. It's been really nice to sort of see that. Somebody was it Carolyn that posted in front of like a river, like a rushing river,
Yeah.
or maybe it was a stream. Somebody posted. Those are really beautiful. But also,
we don't know what that is here.
No, but just looking at pictures that people have posted, I just want to say I've really appreciated those who've shared there, and we can continue to do that whenever you want to share something with the Migrant Trail community.
Amen.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
See or anything?
Yep.
Oh, there we are. So this was poem was written in the 40s by Woody Guthrie, who had been working with some organizers in the camps in California, the pickers, and some of them were from Oklahoma, like, and Texas. Pampa, Texas is where the Dust Bowl drove Woody out and his family. But there were also many Mexicans in those camps, in those labor camps, those pickers of all kinds of produce. And like Margo was saying, when the work contracted out, or there was a depression in the labor market, folks would be just deported, whether they were citizens or not, whether they were long-term residents. They were just rounded up and put on trains and sometimes planes and taken down and dumped off in Mexico where they weren't needed anymore. And so one of those trips, the plane went down, and the newspaper and the radio just said, they named the pilots and the crew, but they just said the rest of the folks were just deportees. And Woody wrote this poem, and it was set to music by a Colorado teacher about 20 years later, or 10 years later, and was popularized by Pete Seeger and the Weavers, and sung by many people. The crops are all in, the peaches are rotten, oranges are stacked, and they're creosote dogs. They're flying back to the Mexico port, pay all their wages, way back again. Goodbye to Tijuana, goodbye Rosalita, adios mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. Have a name when you ride the big airplane, all they will call you will be deportee. My father's own father, he waded that river, die in your deserts. We die in your mountains. We die in your plains. We die in the trees. And we die in your bushes. Both sides of your river. We die just the same. Goodbye, dear one. Goodbye, Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos. Jesus y Maria. Won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they'll call you will be 14. The sky plane caught fire over Los Gatos County like a fireball of lightning. It shook all our ground. Who are all these friends scattered like dry leaves? The radio says that they're just deportees. Goodbye to you one. Goodbye, Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos. Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be 14. Is this the best way that we can harvest our orchards? Is this the best way we can pick our good fruits? To die like the dry leaves, rot on the topsoil, and be known by no name except goodbye to all. Goodbye, Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos. Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deported. The crops are all in, and the peaches are running.
Thank you, Tom Tom.
This, can you see that? Annette, am I on it?
Yeah.
That's, there's a poster done for every year for the community migrant and homeless community health centers conferences every year. And this was one year's, about 10 years ago. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Tom.
Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share, like a poem, or you don't have to sing, but, or you could just share a thought.
I'll put that up. The cats don't.
There was a question in the chat earlier about being able to get everyone's contact information. So the way that we usually do that is a few weeks after the Migrant Trail, you'll receive a link to an evaluation, sort of a feedback. This is the first time we've done this. It'll be a little different than our usual evaluations, but similar. To get your feedback, get your thoughts, and then part of that will ask you if you are comfortable with your name, email, and phone number going out to a list to everybody. So some people will write back and say, oh, please don't use that email. That's my work email. Use this one. Or some will say, I don't want my phone number shared. So it'll ask you that, and then we will send out, a couple weeks after that, we'll send out the list to everybody. And so we will ask permission. Anybody who does not specifically write back with permission will not be on that list. So we don't want to assume, we don't want to have ended up in your spam box and then assumed permission without hearing from you. So that's how we'll work that. I might put it in a Google form or something just so we have it. But that's how we'll probably do it this year. But that won't be probably for at least a week.
This is Brother David. And I was just going to invite anybody who hasn't shared yet to share something. It's be so good to get to meet everybody. There's so many faces that that I've never seen before, and just I think a lot of us are really curious. How did you join the virtual Migrant Trail Walk with us this year? And do you have any memories from past walks? If you've been on past walks, or any reflections of how this week has gone for you? It's so good to be with everybody here.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Hi, it's Roland. So I've known about the Migrant Trail Walk for as long as it's been going on. I've known Kat as long as she's been in Tucson. I always come at the beginning when you leave, and I'm there when we have our lunch together. So I know a couple other folks who are in here. This year was particularly wonderful for me to be able to participate virtually. I've never been able to physically go with you on the trail, but it's always been a part of my heart. And today, for some reason, I've been all teary and crying. I don't know if it was what Margo had to say. I know that it has to do with all the things that have been going on this week in our country, in Tucson, just what's been going on. So I was a little teary. That's why I didn't know quite what to say. I am always amazed by every one of you who does this walk every single year. And my heart is full for every one of you who are capable and able to do that walk and do it with such beauty and grace that is within you. So I feel so like I'm not worthy to be around you folks, only because of what you have done on behalf of all of those who have died in the desert and will continue to die until hopefully something changes for them. So I guess that's really all I really want to say. I've been part of the many movements here in Tucson. I was a school teacher for many years. I'm a retired school teacher, and I always worked with my students. I taught history, but I taught the real history. The only books I had in my classroom were Howard Zinn, 500 Nations, Cahill Gibran, and a couple other books two Angela Davis books. And those are the books that my students were taught about US history and world history. So I've been a part of the movement in a different way. I guess that's it. Thank you very much for every single one of you who does the work that you do every year, all day, all the time. Thank you. That's it.
Roland, if I may, this is Jamie. It's actually so great to see you and hear from you tonight. I only know you precisely from our beginnings and ends, and I hadn't put it together that you were you until just this very moment. And it's just lovely to hear from you and see you again in this interesting space. I'm the one that, well, you so graciously gifted your Murder Patrol button to at one of our ceremonies. And so now, since you've spoken up, I'm like, I've just made the connection with you. So really pleased to see you and realize that you've been here all week with us. I'm sorry I didn't make the connection before.
That's okay. That's
good to see you.
Okay. It's a privilege to be a part of this group. It truly is.
I just wanted I wanted to add a comment. After I came back from the first Migrant Trail Walk, I gave talks in the high schools around in Kansas to Spanish classes and to history classes that were not very open to what I was saying, but they sat and listened to what I was saying, and I heard comments from other people afterwards about that they were quite impressed and had learned some things that they were not open to before. And so I was so thankful I took the walk and could spread the word. So thank you.
Thank you, Dale. I think that is, for those of you that haven't done the walk, the actual walk is basically none of the teach-in pieces that we've had this whole week. When we started the walk 17 years ago, a lot of us were, Todd and Holly and were at Border Links and led delegations all the time. I was at the Derechos Humanos and did talks all the time. And our thing was, we don't want to feel like camp counselors. We kept saying, we don't want to feel like camp counselors. And so we sort of started calling it the shut up and walk. That you're physically you're walking, you're not, and people over the years have said, oh, you should have a speaker every night. And we thought, oh my God, who has energy after 16 miles to sit, so the walk is a very physical thing. And there's something about being so physically uncomfortable that really drives you into your mind, that you start processing a lot and thinking about a lot of things. Oh, that's nice. So it's a very different experience. So those of you who might be wanting to come next year, it doesn't have these pieces, and I don't really want to put them in because that would again be really hard. This has been a lot of work, but at the same time, this is like the walk of the pieces that we don't usually do, the teach-in pieces and the conversation pieces. And it's had a value that I don't think I have appreciated before, because I've always been like, no, not a camp counselor. Like, no, we're not doing workshops. We're just walking. So I really feel this week I've learned the value of that I didn't think I didn't realize I would feel so much. And I've been able to do a lot of reflecting, not so much walking, but more able to be reflective in ways I don't always get to do as an organizer on the shut up and walk version of the Migrant Trail. So I've really appreciated that. And I've really appreciated all the new faces and people just having such amazing and thoughtful questions. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who showed up, and we had no idea if people would have any interest at all in doing this. And we've had like 170 people show up. So that's amazing.
Hello, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm Angelica Silva from Pennsylvania. I learned about the Migrant Trail in 2008 through Christy Brooks when I was working with her. And it was just very nice to learn and to know that white people, American people, are working for immigration, no? Because back then I didn't know anything about this. So thanks to her, I was able to be more conscious and to learn that you're working. So I want to thank you for your solidarity. So on 2008, I learned what she was doing, and I always was interested. Finally, I was able to participate on 2010, and it was just an amazing experience. It gets me emotional every time that I think about it. And but has been one of the most nicest things that I haven't done. And I haven't, from that time, silence has been so different for me, because I remember when we walk in silence, and it's just so deep, very spiritual thing. And also, now that I see people I recognize a lot of you, even it has been 10 years. It's amazing, but you look the same. And from that experience, I have learned so much, and I also have kept amazing friendships that up to today, we keep in touch. Not as much, but we're still there. And just because of this situation that we are living together, I was able to participate again. It has been my intention to participate more, but I haven't been able to do it. So through this setting, you know, you make it available to me. So I just want to thank you, because even it's in a distance, you can still like feel the emotions that we are all feeling while we're working together. So thank you all, and it's nice to see some of you. I don't know, you remember me, but some of you look just the same, and it's been like 10 years. Thank you very much.
I just want to say that you guys that have organized this have done a super job. All of the presentations, the live ones, and the podcasts were really interesting and valuable and educational. And I don't know how you could have done it better. I think it was just great. And I want to thank you for doing that. This year, this was a perfect year for a virtual trip.
Hi, Mohe. It's good to see you. I miss being able to hang out in your yard, your beautiful yard that you built there with all the fruit trees and all the vegetables and all the kids running around and the great food that your community provides us on Sunday nights. And just wish I could be there with you, Mohe.
Hi, Tom. Thank you. Good to see everybody. These are very hard times, and a few hours ago, a dear friend of mine passed away of cancer. His name is Kenny Higland. Some of you may know him. But it's very sad. So, but I have a request for Saulo now. We need to hear from Saulo.
Hi, Adeline. I am actually having a lot of allergy issues and stuff like that. So I actually told the group that I wasn't going to put in my guitar thing tonight. But thank you so much. Thank you, Tom, for the music and everyone. Angelica, un abrazo inmenso para ti, y Silvana. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for walking with us this year and for being in spirit with us. And strength and hope and love to all of you, wherever you are.
And maybe tomorrow we can have an after party.
Maybe tomorrow.
At our house, yeah, a virtual one.
Oh, we miss you so much.
I would like to share a story. The very first walk that Mojevin joined us, I was walking next to him, and we do the presente down the line, and And we have the desconocido or desconocida, or you might say desconocido a for the people whose gender's not known. And I remember turning to him and saying, how do you, how would you say that, in your home language? And he just looked at me and he thought about it, and he said, I have to think about that, because in my language, nobody's unknown. Somebody knows you. Like your mother named you. So there's like no such thing as a desconocido. And it was such a, it was just such a powerful thing to hear that concept. I felt really ashamed of my country, because it's a very common, very common to have these unknowns. And so Mojedin, could you share the word you eventually brought to us as like the closest to that term?
Yeah. The word in Arabic is majhul or majhula, which is because the Arabic is a gendered language. I really, in the context of people dying like this, that is not in battle or not soldiers. This is, I've never heard about it. And I think it's the most difficult thing to say about a person, that they are unknown in my, is that is, maybe I don't know that person, but of course there is nobody that is unknown, and so I always try to carry a cross of a desconocido, desconocida, and I always, when we are in silence, walk in silence, and we call the names of our brothers and sisters who died in the border. I always use both the English and the Spanish and the Arabic version of the word. It's really very significant thing to know about the consequence of our government policies, that is, people die in our neighborhood, or actually I prefer to say are killed by our government in our neighborhood, and they can't be recognized sometimes. This is really very, it's at the essence of what the issue is in this country, okay, where so many deaths happen every day. It doesn't happen anywhere else. That is, other places have wars and they are, have a beginning and an end, but in this country, death happens in our name every day. It's so sad and makes me very angry.
And I see the flag of Palestine behind you, Mohe, and it is that border also.
Oh, yes.
This is that border also, and the suffering and the
my corner in the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we hold those peoples in our hearts as well.
Thank you. Thank you for, Tom always brings me the Palestinian flag to carry. It's always in his truck. Thank you for that.
solidarity.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Hannah Hostetler, and this is my third year participating with the Migrant Trail, and it's nice to see all of your faces. Mohideen, thank you for all you shared, and I just offer similar frustrations and am angered and saddened. But one thing that I wanted to just share with you all, so Trish, a fellow walker, she shared with our safety crew last year that the walk has become an act of community self-care. And with everything happening with the pandemic, the spring, and the state of the nation and the state of our world, really, I have circled back to that phrase of community self-care as I've logged on to all of our talks in the evenings this week, and I've tried to really center and focus in this space from this place here in Kansas City, but then also connecting with all of you from across the United States. And so thank you all for being here and showing up, and it's so good to see you all. And it's been hard to stay focused and present without physically being with all of you, but thanks to everyone who's pulled this all together. And just, yeah, many thanks to everyone's participation this week.
This is Brother David again, and it's my privilege to introduce you to one of our friars who lives here in Elfrida with us, who's been journeying with us all this week. His name is Emmett Murphy, and he's been a Franciscan for 66 years. In the late 70s, early 80s, he helped start a project in the Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia called St. Francis Inn, which has been serving the homeless and the poor for the last 40 years or so. So here's we have to switch seats. So here's Father Emmett.
Hi, folks. I'm the new kid on the block. I've been here for 7 months now in Elfrida, working on the border and ministering and so on with many wonderful people. I'm sorry I missed walking with you because I grew up as a real walker and I love to walk. I just I give you so much credit for the wonderful example that you give, especially today in light of the situation, not only in the world, but particularly in our nation today with all the hatred and bloodshed and violence that we witness and see. So blessings on you all, and hopefully we'll cross paths on one of the trails of life. God bless. Oh, that was very nice. Thank you.
Well, my name is Anna, and I just wanted to say hi. I've been able to walk once before, but I'm the other representative from Kansas City with Hannah. And I just wanted to just say how much I've appreciated the discussions this week and being able to learn more about the space that I walked in, because I got to know a lot more about the mountains, the landscape, a lot more, so that when I do return, I will have a lot more context, which I really appreciate as well. And I just wanted to say, Hannah and I had the privilege of walking together yesterday, and even that small thing of having a little bit of the community in person meant a lot. And so I think one of the things that we talked about in our lives here is trying to, with what we're doing, Hannah's working with migrants and I'm working with refugees, just trying at the heart of it, and remembering that here this week is really just trying to hear people and let them know that we're all human, we're in it together, even if it feels like we can't do much sometimes, to just, validate people and really, say, I'm frustrated too. I'm there with you. Let's work on this and figure it out. And I think that's at the heart of it too, of sometimes when it feels so overwhelming right now, trying to find ways to just connect with each other. And so I appreciated being able to see some familiar faces, wishing I was connecting with you in person, but just how important connection is and just recognizing that. So I really appreciate it.
I'm just gonna say my good nights. Some of you know I have 7-year-old twin girls who are kind of over the pandemic and over the isolation, and have way more energy than any 2 little humans should. So I need to go give back up to my honey and get them down for the night. But it has been really lovely to have a little more relaxed chatting and checking in with all of you. And I'm really glad that Tom suggested having this space and letting it just be a free open space. So good night to you all. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great night.
Thank you, Kat. Good night. Good night to everybody.
Well, everyone, it's 10:49 p.m. in the East Coast, and so I leave it up to you. It's we stay here for a little longer, or we rest, and then we'll see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow at the same time, and it's so good to see you all. Have a good night, rest well, and take care.
Igualmente, compa.
Hasta mañana.
We all tomorrow at the same time, same station, and we have a pretty good closing ceremony put together for y'all and for us, and see you then.
Right, yeah. Tom has been preparing all this, so we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Buenas noches, everyone.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
I won't leave if you don't leave, but you have to leave. Okay. Bye, Samantha. Bye, Bob. Good night. Bye, Cecilia. Bye, Nat and Maggie. Bye, Rolando. Buenas noches.